All right. Hey there. So I did the Zoom class and it didn't seem to have recorded it the first time. So I'm going to go through it pretty quick, and you're more than welcome to email or Facebook me questions if you have them. This is a recording just so that everybody can kind of get a feel for what I was talking about. So any massage therapists who are single therapists who are doing their own finances or trying to figure out how to do them on an Excel sheet, here's just my quick way to do it. And hopefully this can help you. I'll also have 2 templates that I'll share with you when I post this in its final form after it's recorded. So when it comes to finances, there's 2 parts to it, to any accounting. You're going to have your incoming money and your outgoing money. And things you need to do are know what's the most important to record. So when you're talking about expenses or spending money, you want to know what the cost was, what you spent it for, where you spent it, like the location that you paid, the date that you spent it, and then what account you used. If you don't have a single account for business, what account can help you figure out if it was from your personal account or savings account, or if it was just from your general business account. And then you're going to want to keep all of the physical receipts. If you get a lot of e-receipts, download them, put them in a folder, make sure that you save them forever. And that way you kind of have a reference to go back to if you're not sure about something or you have questions about the cost of something along the way. So when you're looking at your expenses, let me take you over to my 2021. I'll give you a quick guide through. We're going to look at it, the way I have it set up is date. What did I buy? So that first line was toilet paper. Where did I buy it? I bought it at Costco. Sometimes I record the count for, like, if you look at the coaching sessions here, I bought 4 sessions. I put what it cost me, and that includes any taxes on the receipt. I don't, use the pre-tax or anything like that. So you put the full cost, including taxes, in there. The account I used, in this case, I used cash at Costco. Sometimes I might write my other account as like my personal account, or I recently just got a business account. So in my 2021 accounts, I actually have a line that says transfer to business. And from there on, it just comes from a single account. So the account used, and then what I do is I write down every time I have something like that, and I let the program do the math. So let's look at February. At the end of the month, I put this gray bar, so I know that's my subtotal. So at the end here, there's a function called, it's called a function, and it's the sum. So equals sum, parentheses, and then you put the section of the graph that you want it to read. So E7, that's that square right there. And it's going to go down, or say E9 to E17. It's going to go down to E17. So if I double click this, I'm actively in there. It's going to highlight what numbers it's counting. And this is addition, so it just adds everything together and gives you a final number. So now I know what I spent, including on that grade in line is my square taxes. So any cost that I might have incurred at that, I believe it's 2.6 plus 10 cents at this point for square. So that's recorded in a different sheet. I put that into my expenses because it's a business expense. And that's my total. So for February, I know exactly what I spent. Now, if I do this every month, I now have 12 different pieces of information. What I can do up here is I can add them all together. So what that does is this selects the entire column, which is all the expenses in E, and it adds them together for the whole year. So at the end, on December 31st, that last line, that's all counted. So every single cent that I spent that year is going to be in that box right here. And that's just a very simple equation. So that's kind of the quick layout of that. You can always change what you need to know up here in the columns. You can add if there's, someone else who bought something for you, you can, write like what employee might have bought it, or if there's anything else that you can think of that might be important for you to, track, you can always add it here. And if you find out you don't need a list of, that information in any future document, you can just remove that column. So that's just like quick finances on the expenses of doing business. If we go back to the income part, that's the other half of your accounting. You need to know what's coming in order to put money out. So what I do is I track it by appointment. I kind of keep everything in the same graph. I have the date, I have the client, I have the session, and what it costed me. And then if they gave me any tips here, I have how that was paid for. And then in this column, I have the cost of square tax. So that's square tax is 2.6% plus 10 cents. And I'll show you what that looks like in this one here. So for example, a 2-hour session, they paid me $135. And then they put a tip on the card, paid for it with a card, which means I use Square. So I have to take that expense for that line of income from Square and figure out what it costed me. So that's D4 plus E4. And then you're going to do that time. So you're going to put the star. 0.026 is 2%. And then you're going to close that parentheses and then put plus 0.1. And that's going to be the 10 cents. So it's right up here on that function line. You'll see that equation right there. And when you highlight it, you'll see that it highlights the 2 boxes that are in that equation. So it kind of tells you what you clicked and how you got that number. And then you can actually take that and you can copy it to another row and it'll give you the next row down. So if I take this function and I go Control C or copy, and then I move down one and I go Control V, it's got the same function for line beneath it on D5 instead of, D4. So you can actually copy a function all the way down that column. And as you add information on the left into the columns that it's reading, it'll start giving you finished answers at the other end. You'll notice some of the areas they were, for this one, that's 3/6. It means that they had a prepaid package and they gave a tip in cash. So I don't need the square there. So I leave that, that part empty. So you have all of these lines here. It kind of gives you your basic income. It gives you all of the information about where that money is coming from. And what you do is at the end of the month, you can add those all up. And you can do that by having it do your math again. So if you come over to the income categories, you're going to do those income lines. So remember, income, the payments are in category D. So D40 to D79 was what February was. So it adds all of the lines in February. And then, you might notice the plus 100 and plus 50 were 2 different events that I did on top of that. So I just added it because it was a simple number. Over here, I did that same section, but I did it for the square tax category. So it went to H instead of D, and it does the same numbers, 40 to 79. With the expenses, I pulled that over from this other tab. If you go to the bottom of the page, you can make different tabs. Go to the expense tab. You find what that number is, and you're going to pull it over. And granted, this number here is without the square tax because you already counted that, remember. So square tax, expenses, what tips I earned, and those are going to be from the categories of all the tips on the left again. And then you have to do your own math for what you're paying yourself. So a good example is for mine. I figure out how many hours of the month I worked and how many were chair massage. So 44.5 were hands-on hours and 5 hours of chair massage. And I have an equation down here that is X number of hours times $45 per an hour. So I pay myself $45 an hour plus $20 an hour for every chair massage and then tips. So when I click on February, it's going to say 44.5. So that's the number of hands-on hours times 45, the number of dollars I get per hour. And then plus in another parentheses, there's going to be 20 times 5. So that's 20 times the amount of chair massage I did. And that function is going to give me that number there. So now I know what I made and the computer did all the math for me. So you have these numbers here that you can look at, and that gives you an overview of all of your information. Incoming money, outgoing money, money you're paying yourself, tracking your hours and what your actual paycheck was at the end of your hours plus your tips. So you have a little bit of both in there. You have on another page, I have what I used to do that would explain this in my accounting, and I would do my business accounting right above my personal accounting because I did them both on the same page. So this is just a copy of that February we were just looking at right here, where I put my business gross, I put my tips, There's a rolling amount from prepaids and other services that I might have in my bank account because I didn't spend money from the years prior. So that's what's in my bank account. And so I added these two because they're positives. I added these to the, seems to not have liked what I did. There we go, I fixed it. All right, so I added these two columns to the rolling total, and then it subtracted the business costs, and it subtracted what I paid myself because that went into my personal account, not my business account. We're splicing it between two accounts now, personal and business. And this is a running total for the business minus what I've just put into my personal account. And then I cut out a piece that was for taxes. So if you look up in the function line again at the top, you have the previous income, and I'm going to take out 30% because that's, you know, give or take about the amount you want to set aside for taxes. You could change that number if you think you want to put aside 25 or 15, whatever makes you happy, whatever you've been using previously. You can adjust that for it. You just put times and then 0 point and then however much of that percent. So 30 is 3. If you wanted to do 15, it'd be 0.15. And it'll give you that number that you're going to take out of that account and put into your imaginary or your second line of savings that says for taxes. So you can see that there's a separate running total down here at the bottom line where you have money that's accounted for because it's been paid to me, but I haven't done the service yet, versus money I did the service and I received money for that I'm going to pay taxes on. So I just keep those two accounting lines separate so I know what that money in that account is for and where it goes. But it's real simple to just kind of trace what you're coming into your account, what you're taking out of it, what is the end amount that's being added over time. So every month that amount grows or shrinks depending on how much you received and spent. Everyone's going to have their own way of managing and looking at how they want to see these numbers displayed. And you can change it up all you want. You can make everything a little bit color coded. You can make it all in two different columns where it's just incoming and outgoing in one and your rolling total in the other. But this is just a good template for you to see. I have a draft over here that has it and it's kind of color coded. So again, you have this is the business on top of the second line is the personal and down, but you have that incoming is the two green ones. And then the outgoing is the red. This number is calculated off of this without regard to what's the running total here because you're paying your taxes every month to yourself. And you put that in a line of its own so that you know that that can grow. So every time you move to the next month, you're actually rolling that cost. So if I show you what this one is, so if you look in February, I had 1,400 in the bank account, and then I got more income for taxes. So I'm going to add that together. So it's going to be this column right here. It's going to be the G65 plus the new column, which is H65. And that's going to give you your rolling total. This is the ongoing. So you're just essentially adding up last month to this month to the next month to the other. And you're creating that continuous tracking of that account. And now sometimes there might be months like during the pandemic, if you were closed and you bought something for your business, but you didn't have income, it might subtract instead of adding because the number is smaller. But what it'll do is it'll keep on rolling those expenses. And with a chart, you can actually do negative. So like right over here, I had a negative number and it calculated it just like normal. So, you know, you can play with the format and figure it out as you go. If you have questions, like feel free to ask me, I can explain it more. But here is going to be a document that kind of has a little outline of how that line works. So you'll see those two. And back to this one again. So you have to figure out what works best for you. But if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me or message me on Facebook. It'll make it a little easier for you. Here's another sheet that will have some shortcuts for you. It'll have the formulas that I just showed you and kind of an explanation right next to them of what they were. So you can see what you're doing there. And then again, this is the square tax and the 30%, just a shorthand for you in case it's helpful. So hopefully this is helpful. I will call this the end to it, and we'll see what you guys think.